And we are filming episode 12 of Above Spirituality. Today I have an old friend of mine. He was born Joseph. Then I met him as Jerry, but I truly know him as Jai. He is a member of the Mohabbat mission. After 7 years, I finally got it right. The Mohabbat mission, which earlier watcher viewers of the show might recognize from one of his good friends. And well, would you consider Moby a teacher of yours?
Oh, yes. It's
Yeah.
definitely a mentor figure. Of mine.
Yeah, and teacher Moby, a member of the Sufi community, a student of Master Mastawar Qalandar, a saint out in Pakistan, and, of course, the metaphysical adventurer. How you doing today, Jerry? Jai?
It's good to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. We did just have some technical difficulties, so we're going to manifest.
Yeah, it feels like we're in a recurring dream.
Oh, it does feel, yeah. What's this mean? And that's a good segue because our topic today is going to be life as a dream. One of the reasons I'm really excited about this topic is that, Jai, you're basically also, this is so funny because we were just saying all this stuff before, but we're doing it again. Jai, you're also like my spiritual cousin in a way because he is an alumni of the School of Metaphysics. Mm-hmm. But you kind of like spread your wings and now you're more involved with like the Sufi school, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And how long have you been like a member of that community? How long have you been like in that?
I would have to say like over 7 years now. And I say 7 is arbitrary because I took Bayat spiritual lineage under my spiritual master in 2017. But I feel like he's been with me in a way. It's that feeling that goes through all divine friendship aspects, I like to call it.
Now, what was the dream like when you met your master? Was there like, did the fourth wall just die? Did you become lucid? What was the actual experience like when you met him? Because, I've, to my knowledge, I've never met someone in an advanced state of consciousness. Or if I have, it didn't like shatter my illusions or anything. It didn't bring me past the veil. Because I know Moby's story. He told us on the show. But what was it like for you?
Yeah, I've often struggled how to say this story. But me being this identity of the metaphysical adventurer, I was living life as a dream, and literally people in my life were just aspects of me, and I can manifest whatever I want. So knowing that, I was kind of manipulating events here and there. And when I came about this path, and I met this individual, it almost felt like I was an aspect. So it kind of shattered. I was like, so what if you were dreaming, but then you realize that you are not the dreamer?
That's like that classic philosophy question of like, how do I know you exist? Like, well, I know I exist because I'm here. I don't know if you exist, but like to really flip that and be like, how now I'm just feeling like the figment of, I don't want to say like a more powerful mind because that doesn't do our own spirits justice, but like that's an interesting perspective. So like subjectively, did that just kind of like bring you back, like take a step back, or like was that a pleasant experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. It shattered my reality.
Wow.
It brought me to a point of, now I have responsibility. Like before I was just playing around, and now it's like, okay, so I have this influence now. I have to tread carefully. Like that Spider-Man saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
You gotta quote Spider-Man on the podcast. No, it's interesting because something that I kind of quest for and seek within is that, I think, what was his name? Wayne Dyer used to call that kind of like your quantum moment, where there's like a change in perspective. And I hear about that with a lot of people who get really involved in like spiritual work, especially with like spreading it, is there's usually a moment where it's like, and then the work began, or like, then I knew it was important that like I really like get into this. And it's almost interesting because it's like, I'd almost imagine like before that, the life probably really felt like a dream, and dream in that way of like what's the point, So you have always been a person, because I know a lot of people in like spiritual community like go by this mindset, this philosophy of like, life is like a dream. It's interesting because to me, I've had some experiences with that, but that's not like a big one for me. So can you just open it up and tell us like what does that concept like mean to you? And like, how do you live it? You touched on it a little bit, but I kind of want to know for my personal self.
Yeah, so experiencing life as a dream. It's like all manifestation is possible. Kind of because I'm a lucid dreamer, and you also can control your dreams, right? So
I when I'm lucky.
no, more and more, it's like when you feel like you have no consequences, then it just becomes a playing field. Everything just becomes an experimentation because you are the ultimate observer. And it's kind of like a video game where you can just reset and there's like no consequences, you know? So you're just experimenting with aspects of your life that could be possibilities, and you could manifest from that perspective.
So have you found that like mitigates the experience of like consequence, or like in the actual like, world that you then, I guess you could say, friggin' manifested, or have you found the world to be a little more gentle because of that?
That's a great question. A little bit of both. Because here there's a lot more responsibility. Because it's like, it's not just your dream. You're also kind of involved in other people's dreams too. Like it's like you're the main character, right? But you also want to take care of the supporting characters because they kind of support the main character.
I gotcha. So you talked a little bit about, in that way, kind of like manifesting the student-teacher relationship. What else would you say you've like manifested, or what like lines of probability have you like flowed down because of this, like, I don't want to say belief, or like this mindset of life as a dream?
Things that I've manifested. So how I kind of roam this world, right? Money has value, right? If we see money in dream, it represents value.
Yeah.
And to me, the most valuable thing are relationships, because relationships bring the most resources that I can utilize in this physical experience. So I see relationships to be the most valuable resource.
Now, one thing I'd just love to touch on, and we talked about this a little bit in our first take, but I'm going to bring it back because it's important.
Divine friendship.
Yes. Well, divine friendship too, but a little bit more just, Jai and I, we have a little bit of a shared understanding of dreams as, students of the School of Metaphysics, because that is a huge area of the study. We have this sort of system, we call it like the universal language of mind, and I swear by it. It is just uncanny how, you can kind of like hear someone's dream and you just like peer right into their mind. And the premise of it is that, the dream comes as a series of messages that has a generally universal, set of symbols to interpret it with. And thus you were mentioning how, as we see it, money means value as like a phenomena of thought. And then people in dreams, you wanna let them know, like, I hate to quiz you.
Okay.
What do people represent?
So people represent, if I remember correctly, aspects of the dreamer and the dream.
And, my perspective on a dream, which is just a product of our school, is that, dreams really serve as a message from the inner self to the outer self to guide you through life. I sort of believe that, like, if the subconscious mind has like an agenda of sorts, you could say it just wants to see you develop as a person. And that can be highly individual. You could say it's to see you grow spiritually, but developing as a person and growing spiritually to me is like one and the same. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So, kind of going off those premises, if you see life as a dream, and then of course dreams are, super plastic and fluid, and like, we know what everyone knows what dreaming is like. But if you see it as it's this sort of like unreal situation where everything has a symbolic message to me, guiding me, how, well, one, would you say that's kind of how you see it in living life as a dream?
Yeah.
You would say that?
More like interpreting things subconsciously rather
Uh-huh.
than seeing things for face value. It's kind of like almost like magical thinking in terms of like numbers and colors and emotions.
You know,
You can
some
assign a meaning to it.
something I was contemplating on later was trying to see like a deeper truth in myself and in the things I do. And it's not like by accident that we use the word deeper, because it's like inner, just as your dreams, as we were taught, dreams come from the inner self to the outer self. So do you find that things are deeper when you live this teaching and you live this way?
The deepness varies, but yes, depending on how connected I am with myself, I get certain messages. Remember, there's different kinds of dreams. There's the regular type of dreams, which is just like a simulation of experience you've had 24 to 48 hours. And there's intuitive dreams.
Yeah.
That's what I love.
Do you find that you often dream in this way? Like when we say intuitive dreams, just to explain our jargon, we're talking about dreams, stuff like what you might call a precognitive dream, like you see the future in a sort. You might connect with an entity, you'd basically say on the other side, or have like some other more, I guess you'd classically call it like a psychic phenomena. Are you finding that you're having experiences like that, like in the waking life?
I have feelings of deja vu, kind of like I've experienced it before. Tying it to like a dream, is this really like a dream? You know, have I experienced this? So it gives more of like a surreal perspective, even when you're like awake.
Surreal is a good word. Jai, tell us, when did you start like just living life as a dream? And I think we're gonna do our best to like I mean I want to like define it, but maybe I'm overthinking the dream. Just tell us, when did this like become a big part of your inner self?
I mean, I've always been like a lucid dreamer. I often use dreams as an escape mechanism, you could say, as my coping mechanism. I'm so good at it. I could sleep anywhere. And
Extremely jealous.
literally, it's just, I think I was always kind of lucid dreaming. I just didn't have the terminology, especially divine friendship, until I went to the School of Metaphysics. And I studied the astrology and like the dream aspects, the symbology, and like how to communicate in the universal language of mind.
Mm-hmm. So, and you were in the school about maybe 10 years ago was when you first started there?
Yeah. Wow, I can't believe it's been that
Yeah,
long.
a whole decade. A whole passing of a cycle, the 7-year cycles.
Yes.
So, okay, you were kind of already set up to have this more surreal, fluid experience of reality. And about 10 years ago, that became a little more codified, is what you're saying. Like, is that when you say, like, well, maybe I shouldn't assume for you. Would you say that you carry this kind of mindset that life is a dream, like, as you go, like, through every day, more or less?
Oh yeah, I believe, depending on the mood, I could manifest anything.
So it's like a trippy existence.
100%.
Hell yeah. I should say heaven, yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, dreams to me generally have like even when you remember multiple dreams from the same night, I often see it as it's like different takes, like different angles to look at like the same general like lesson or message. You could say, well, what was the dream about? And not just the story of what the dream was about. Like what movement within was the dream about? So I want to ask you, over these last 10 years or so, what has the dream been about?
That's a good question. What is the dream about? So it's like if I were to write a book of my life, it'll be all about the experiences of divine friendship I've been having. So the people that have kind of helped me along the way to get me to the higher path right now, which is in Sufism, because I've always been interested in the mystic path.
And now you keep saying divine friendships. I know what that means, at least to me. How would you... Well, what would be your like basic definition of like a divine friendship?
So divine friendship, it's a term that I learned at the School of Metaphysics, but how I define it is it's a concept where no matter where you are, there's always an aspect of you within the physical where you can connect to that'll bring you back into the flow of the divine. Because you're always connected to divinity. But in a mental health perspective, sometimes we fall out of it. And I've had a lot of experiences like that recently, especially with, the quarantine and the COVID. And
Yeah.
I do the bad thing about isolating. I need to know when to reach out for help. I'm learning all about that. Very important for self-care.
Yeah.
But one thing I'll say is during that time, on that divine friendship, right? The dreams I was having, even if I was in like the depression, like kind of trying to hide from my responsibilities, Master Calendar, my Pierce up, would show up in the dream. And somehow it's like a message thinking, it's because when you have a mentorship show up, it's inner self, right? Kind of showing me like, okay, yeah, everything's all right. And you just have to get back on track.
Well, that it's interesting because you have so many experiences of like having, at least for me in dreams, like having like like just straight up like a shitty day, like just bad vibes all day, and then you dream. And I think I was talking about this with Truthy. Shout out Truthy and all of our friends having out again today. It was either talking with, I forget who I was talking to. It was one of our guests about how often we do ecstatic dance, which I know you've been involved with.
Mm-hmm.
I would just have the worst time. Yet my dreams would sort of show me just something so beautiful, like inwardly. And, to me, the main thing of the dream is like keeping you on track. Like it'll tell you when you're on track, like in this sort of flow of the divine, and it'll tell you when you're not. And it's usually brutally honest. And a lot of times, the characters are the ones who are showing that. So you're kind of finding that in a surreal way, people almost like, to me, it's almost like beyond their sense of agency. Because, in a dream, your dream characters, they really don't have an agency. They're just a figment of the mind, you could say, a manifestation of the mind. And they're acting out this greater part of you, being the subconscious mind or the soul or whatnot. And so are you kind of saying like in your waking life, your waking dream life, you consider a divine friend the person who sort of acting as God, like brings you back?
Not really acting as God, but
that might have just been me projecting.
That's good. But it's placed there by divinity. So it's always an opportunity for you to return back and flow. And that's a choice. That's where free will exists, right?
Yeah.
And it was interesting you're talking about nightmares. Ever been in a nightmare and you were lucid?
Fortunately, no.
So I've experienced that in very many different perspectives. And when you're in a nightmare, so it's like an uncomfortable feeling, but you feel you're in control. So applying that into like uncomfortable situations in physical reality, that's kind of, it's helped me move through a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I could, because I mean, the normal reality of people is that their thoughts, energies, like their inner experience can be overwhelming. It can sort of like overpower one's soul or sense of will. And, like you think about it in so many spiritual practices, like and there's truth in it, but they say like, basically you just have to engage your will. You have to just not believe these things. And that's not always, that's often easier said than done. So do you kind of find by sort of detaching from the world as this sort of unreal thing, your mind is just a little more like open?
Oh, you could say that. I'm a lot more open.
How would you say it?
Just like that. Just because of the experiences I've had that were more out of the ordinary, I'm more open to more out of the ordinary experiences. So I kind of create them, you could say.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because it's like a lot of people who are involved or interested in spirituality are, especially in the modern day, they're very interested in like what are like these latent abilities of my mind. Manifestation is extremely popular, visualization going hand in hand with that. And of course, in the lucid state of the dream, that's what we all love. Once you become lucid, it's like, okay, what's the really cool thing I want to do? And I think people are looking for ways to bring that aspect of the mind into their waking life. Would you say that, like, you have said that looking at life like a dream helps you to do that?
Oh, yes. That's a great tool.
Well, I kind of think that's partially because, like, oh my gosh, I just spit on the mic.
Just a matter of perspective.
Alexander will cut that out. He won't cut it out, so. No, he won't cut it out. Nothing's getting cut. Moving on. What I find is that I think, when you look at a lot of teachings, you think about even like a Christian teaching, Jesus said, it's like, by your faith are you healed. Jesus said straight up, that which a man believeth in his heart with no doubt, like he could tell a mountain to jump into the sea and it would. And I think a lot of what blocks people from their ability to manifest or to move beyond is that at some level, their beliefs block them. They think the world is real, which is not an unsurprising belief. And thus, all these amazing things that we hear we can do, we struggle to actually do.
It's really interesting, that concept of this world is not real. For me, it reminds me that there's multiple realities. It really depends on your mood and mind state. And if you can tap into ultimate reality, this is like in that zikr, La ilaha illallah. There's only one reality, and that is God exists. Whatever you want to say. Divinity will, like we're talking about in the School of Metaphysics, the universal laws will always trump human law.
So, it's kind of reminding me when you're thinking about, like, how do you approach, like, if anyone wanted to try this, like, mindset of life is like a dream, is that, because as you get more and more inward, more and more dreamlike, the world becomes less and less real in a way. And so, like, you're just trying to let go, because, my thought had a loop, but I found it. We're often taught in spiritual teachings, especially ones that incorporate stuff from the East, that there is an illusory aspect of our existence, which it's like, you hold the gun up to me, suddenly, it doesn't feel that illusionary, it kind of feels very real and dangerous. But what we are taught is, like, how you want to let go of this fixation that on the world and as it is. So to start looking at life as a dream is to start willingly letting that go and then thinking, how do I want to dream?
Just putting yourself to a different perspective that things are always changing, and it can change. And it does change. And it could change for the better. You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just such a fluid aspect of a dream, and I'm reminded of when I was I think it was 20, and I was living in Wuhan, China, of all places, way before Wuhan was a cool place that everybody knew about. And I was a young man. I was just getting into all this spiritual stuff. And I remember I tried actively for 3 days to live this belief that life is a dream. So if I tell you a dream I had, would you like to take a crack at interpreting it?
Sure.
Awesome. This was the most powerful dream I ever had. I remember I'm walking the streets of Wuhan, and it's summer. It's hot. I don't speak a fucking lick of Chinese or Mandarin. I know 5 people in this country, this entire country, and I just met them a couple weeks ago. Most people do not speak English. There's a huge cultural differences. So I'm just really in this very different world, mentally. And I remember I just walked around and everything I look at, I'm like, this isn't real. This is just something I'm aware of. This is just something that's happening around me. And yeah, you do get this sense of malleability. After 3 days of that, I remember I went to bed at the hotel I was living at. And I had this dream. I was looking up other planes of reality on Wikipedia. And then it started melting, the screen.
Huh.
And then I was in this big wasteland. And it was where the sidewalk ends. It was this falling off place. There's this huge vortex of light and clouds. And so then I wanted to go into it and kind of like you were saying, like you directed, a dream character said, oh, you just will yourself there. You just imagine it. And then I was in it. And then this was just probably one of the few mystical experiences I've had in this life. I dreamt that I was in space. And I was looking out this beautiful like cosmos and all these stars. And I saw like an oval of godlike figures. They were like big, powerful figures. And on the top, they were like white. And on the bottom, they were like red and black. And at the poles were like supreme beings, like the leaders. And they were shooting like all of this energy into like a big vortex in the middle. And I just watched that for a while. And then there was like the two leaders like sort of nodded to each other. And they stopped it and they all just started fighting. And I watched that. What do you see in that? Because I've thought about this dream a bunch.
Well, there's a lot of things going on there, right? So you initially start in a stranger in a strange land.
Yeah.
So, but somehow you willingly, and correct me, remind you were lucid in this dream, or?
I was like partially lucid.
Okay, so semi-lucid.
Yeah.
So you're able to manipulate certain aspects. You changed that place of mind, and you became a lot more expansive. I heard vortex, right?
Yeah.
That's taking you to another place of mind, and then you somehow got into space.
Yeah.
But the visual that I'm not quite clear of, the melting LCD.
It was like I'm literally looking at like a screen on Wikipedia, and it was like it just started like falling.
Okay,
like the letters started falling.
That kind of makes me feel like you were in an uncomfortable situation. Kind of, it's like a fringe of like a nightmare. You know what's going on? So you're like, let me change it. You know, like you willfully were like, okay, I can change my mind, and you chose to do it. You took control.
What would you say about like the godlike figures?
So this is. So your dreams are also where you want to be. You desire to be around these deities, like away from a place you don't recognize. This is where you're comfortable the most, it feels like, in a spiritual environment where there's any possibility. And that's where you were brought to in your dream. But then what's also interesting is, for some reason, these aspects, I don't know, some people started fighting, right? Were these the deities?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's wherever you go, there's a little bit of turmoil. So somehow you create an experience, and then somehow a part of it's getting chaotic. So I'm curious, like, how does that transition?
You know, I think kind of with like the life as a dream thing, you just start like the blinders fall off, and you start to see like the truth of the inner self. And so I kind of wonder if like that was a bit of like my own inner truth of like what's going on, with a lot of like energies and this sort of struggle for balance between them, you know? And I really don't think I could have had a dream like that without like disconnecting from what I thought was true. In a way, just like you were saying, like Shams and Rumi. Or was that in the first take?
Yeah.
Was that in the first dream or the other dream?
That was another dream.
Yeah.
No, but it's relevant though, because it's kind of like you wanted another experience, and you couldn't have it where you were, and so you manifested another one.
I'm really interested, like, why that occurred to me, like today, because like, what is the synchronicity of that? And you know,
it is very interesting that you brought up Shams and Rumi, because the whole dynamic there is a student and teacher relationship, but the key thing is how Rumi was just like, he was a great teacher, and it was like the best of that time. And Shams was like, I need to find someone where I can share this gift of divinity. And so when they met, Shams was like to Rumi, you know, it feels like you're looking for a higher education, some kind of perspective. But
sort of brought him back into the flow, like you were saying.
Yeah. So Shams is kind of just like, okay, Rumi, if you want to experience something more, you got to get away from the books and like the teachings, because what I'm about to give you, you experience. And what made Rumi different than all the other scholars is like he was there to experience things, not just to know everything and be popular. That's what set him aside from everyone else. But everyone loved him because he knew so much. And Shams like shattered that whole reality.
To just switch gears a little bit, with living, like choosing
Mm-hmm.
this mindset of like to live like a dream. Would you recommend that for people who are like looking to live a little more spiritually?
Yes. For simply saying. Oh,
Okay.
can you expand that? What do you mean live more spiritually? Because
Well,
this
any
word's been
person
thrown
who's looking
around.
for like to be a more spiritualized person, wants to connect with themselves more, want to connect with the spiritual side of things, I think people know when their desire is to be spiritual. But I want to give you the floor because I would love you to share. One, you can share with our audience, like give them your message. How would you recommend they do it? And then two, like what is in it for them? And then if there's time, a third thing.
Okay. So if you want to experience life as a dream, you make the intention. Like I've met people who are constantly having experiences, but they're not really dreaming. But they don't really think about having a dream. Some people just naturally are dreamers. So it just depends on what you want possible in your life, if it makes sense.
So you set the intention and then you kind of like start to dream of the thing that you want to have.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, dream of what you want to have is kind of you put the intention that maybe you don't even know what you want to have, but you could say you can incubate that dream. I want to know what I want to have within a dream.
How do you recommend that people like, because it's not, I mean, it starts with that seed of like, okay, you set the intention,
Mm-hmm.
but like, how would you recommend to people? Because they still have to like let go of this like stranglehold, you could say the ego has on keeping them as like a physical being, like if someone is like finding it difficult to like fully buy into this belief they're trying to live, what would be your advice then?
So if someone you're saying is struggling to detach themselves from their physical
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
how would they use dreams?
Well, how could you recommend they do detach and they start to view life as a dream more?
Again, it goes back to the intention. If they want to do it, request it from a dream, because dream is just a tool. But when you're living life as a dream, look at the subconscious, look at the synchronicities, right? When you make an intention and you're just following the feeling and the flow, things will come to you by law of attraction.
So you start to look for like the cracks in the seam of like, okay, this isn't actually real.
little-
Because
I mean,
like, how could this have
You
happened?
start seeing angel numbers, or colors,
Okay,
or,
so
or people start saying like the same thing over and over again. That kind of catches your attention.
so you make the intention of wanting to see life as a dream. You start to make the intention of what you want to come to you in the dream. Then you like start looking for it to manifest.
Well, let's be more specific. So, when someone wants to be more spiritual in a dream, let's say that they're religious, right? But religion and spiritual are two different things. Let's say they've read the Bible, but they want an experience of Jesus. They want to know, like, how is Jesus? So, put the intention there. I would like to experience Jesus,
Okay.
and maybe you have a dream about that.
The last thing I would like to ask, because I usually recommend that as people grow spiritually, you don't want to be naive, because there are usually traps, pitfalls in any spiritual endeavor. Like there are obstacles that may arise. If you have encountered any of these obstacles in like the spirituality of like living life as a dream, what is one that comes to mind and how would you address that? Like, how would you recommend, if one of our member in the audience like tries to go for this, if they really try to shoot their shot with living this, educate them if you could share your wisdom.
Okay, so if they try to experience life of the dream and they're having difficulties.
Yeah, if something like what's an obstacle that might come up?
Like a challenge within the dream
Yeah.
experience in the physical. Okay. Or trying to have the dream.
Either, but yes.
Okay. You can go many channels. Let me think about this.
A little closer with the mic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, attaboy.
Can you restate that question? Because I'm not fully
If somebody
clear.
tries this out for themselves, they say, I want to start living life like a dream. What is a challenge that might happen to them? And what's a challenge you might have experienced?
A challenge I might have experienced in living life as a dream. It's just when the physical experiences become more like nightmare-like, and this is tied to like mood. because identify with more like mood disorders and like the mental health perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
So
if
it's just you feel in your body the stress and the tightness.
yeah, you might become, as you connect with the inner mind and become more subconscious, you might. Well, that's interesting because then, yeah, I mean, the subconscious is the source of like that aspect of self, the feeling aspect. So how would you then, if that does start to happen to someone as they live this teaching, what would be your advice on how would they deal with that?
Well, one thing is it takes practice. So you hold the intention and like journal your experiences. Journaling is a really great tool, like dream journaling, right? But like observing yourself. First, you have to observe yourself. Like for the individuals who want to experience life as a dream, how do you see it benefiting you?
So what I'm kind of hearing is, you want to look at the world as sort of unreal in a way. So you're practicing detachment as a spiritual virtue. Then you start to verify it. Just like if you wanted a lucid dream, you have like, you're looking for the sign of like what's not real.
Synchronicities.
Yeah, you're looking for your synchronicities. You look to people to help bring you back into whatever the mind is manifesting. You set your intention. We don't have time for today, but obviously there's a symbolic nature of dreams. And I'll plug a little bit of how people can learn that. And then you just start living it. And when you find it to become nightmarish, overwhelming, kind of ground yourself through maybe something like journaling. Yeah, I think, because now you're practicing a lot of spiritual practices. You're practicing detachment, manifestation, surrender, guidance, and grounding. What would you say, as we're about to close up, is the ultimate benefit of living life as a dream?
Keep throwing out this. It's become a buzzword, living life as a dream. I think really it's just, even in manifestation, you don't know how it's going to come to you. So you put the intention out there and you just got to surrender to it and just go into the flow. That's the best way I could say. And people will bring you into that flow.
That's a good clip. That's a good clip, Alex. Well, I've really loved having you here, Jai. And I'm sure this won't be the last time, but there's going to be Snickers. Plug your shit.
Okay, yeah.
How could people what are you doing? Like anything you'd like them to know about that you're up to?
If you want to search what I do on social media, I'm nothing, but I like to have my, I document my experiences and whatever I'm experiencing here on social media, 777 Adventures. It's like cringe content, but I like to, for me, it's all about self-observation. That's what this whole spiritual experience is for me. So everyone here, it's just, I'm overly humbled.
Excellent. And then, of course, they might catch you at a number of the Sufi Zikrs.
Sufi meditations, yes, and Elgin. If you guys are on the Chicagoland location, look that up.
And they can also live stream it, right?
Yes. If you're remote, then through Meetup.
Through Meetup, and we'll make sure those are plugged.
But there's many different organizations depending on what level of spirituality you want to get to, like the School of Metaphysics.
Well, what I would also say, of course, but what I would say on that is one thing that we didn't talk about enough is the symbolic nature of dreams, which I'd say we'd probably both recommend looking into the Universal Language of Mind book by she goes by Barbara Gwynn Condren. You can find that out through the School of Metaphysics. We do a free webinar every Wednesday night for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more. We will plug that on dreamschool.org. That's a great way to get started and then to manifest as you desire. Jai, any last words for our audience?
Yeah. How would you guys like to do a harmonization experiment?
Play the harmonium for us, brother.
Because this is like non-verbally, we're going to just connect. And I'm just... We'll do it 2 more times. Right? So yeah, we'll feel it, right? It's like a little relaxation exercise. All the tension, just release that through the breath.
Everybody together, right? Once a second.
So deep breath in.
Inshallah.